Pests and Predator podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes, powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Whether you're a farmer, researcher, or educator, visit fieldheroes.ca to learn how beneficial insects can work for you. Welcome to another episode of the Pest and Predator podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com. I've got two great guests today. We're going to really dig in on, as we'd like to do here, beneficial insects and really talking to entomologists and finding out what exactly is going on inside that canopy. Today we are joined by, like I mentioned, two guests. We've got Rachel Pizante and Carol Frost. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Okay, Rachel, let's start with you. Introduce yourself and some of your background and what you're working on.
Sure. I'm a PhD student at the University of Alberta. Carol's one of my supervisors, and I work broadly on flower visiting insects, but I focus on hoverflies, and I work on them in a few different settings, but my main focus is in agricultural settings and canola crops.
Very cool. We're going to learn more about hoverflies here today. Carol, how about yourself?
I'm Carol Frost. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Renewable Resources at the University of Alberta. I'm an insect community ecologist, and I'm very interested in ways that we can conserve beneficial insects in agricultural systems in Canada.
Yeah, as we should be. And this is a topic that I think more and more farmers are aware of, but there's still a lot of there's still a lot of learning to be done, but there's also a lot of research to be done as well. It's a very, very I find a very interesting field, and I have found these Pest and Predator podcasts so interesting over the years. So, Rachel, let's start with you. Hoverflies are a keen interest of yours. Why are hoverflies an important family of beneficial insects?
So hoverflies are important because they actually provide two ecosystem services. So the adults fly around and visit flowers. They visit them for nectar and pollen, but as they're visiting the flowers, they'll get pollen on themselves. They visit other flowers, and then they can pollinate. While the larvae of some species of one subfamily, they can predate on aphids. So the adults, the females, will lay their eggs near aphid colonies, and then the larvae, which are it's a family of flies, so the larvae are maggots, so they don't have any legs, and their mouth parts are two hooks, and they'll tear through aphid colonies.
Carol, anything else there?
No, other than I think, as Rachel usually tells people, they're a really underappreciated insect family. They're incredibly diverse in Canada. In Rachel's study, she found 92 species in agricultural fields in Alberta. So given that they do such useful things, I think they're underappreciated and understudied.
Yeah, need to get more attention. And to be honest with you, maybe I'm admitting this for a lot of the audience, I really wasn't aware that much of hoverflies before Rachel and I chatted a couple weeks ago. So I think you're very correct in that statement. So, Rachel, are there particular hoverfly species that are particularly more important as beneficial insects?
Yes, there's one particularly for the prairie provinces, Toxomerus marginatus. It's a small species, maybe only 5-6 millimeters long. And it's pretty easy to ID, at least central Alberta, because it's the only one of its genus that's around. As you get more further east, you're going to find more species of this genus. Like I said, they're small, and you can tell what they are because on their abdomen, they have a fancy little pattern that looks like two commas, and they'll have a yellow band around their abdomen, so around the outside of the abdomen. And they're important because they actually visit canola in higher rates than bees. So we found in our study very little bee visitation to canola. One year we only found 14 bees visiting canola out of all the transects we walked in the canola, whereas Toxomerus marginatus we found well over into the hundreds. And the larvae do predate on aphids as well.
And are they easy to identify?
Yes, yeah, they're very easy to identify. With that special pattern on their abdomen, they really stand out compared to other hoverflies that more just have banded patterns on their abdomen.
Okay. And are there like are the field borders important for the hoverflies then?
Yes, so the hoverflies will visit flowers in the field borders, and they use field borders um, for resources that they can't find in the crops.
To add to that,
Yeah.
a major finding from that Rachel made in some of her research was the huge importance of treed field borders to hoverflies. And so Rachel did a study where she placed bidirectional flight intercept traps in field borders, both treed field borders and herbaceous, so just grassy field borders. So
Mm.
she was able to catch the number of hoverflies flying out of trees into canola, the number of hoverflies flying out of canola into trees, and the same in grassy field borders. So the number flying out of grassy borders into crops and out of crops into grassy borders. And she found a dramatic result that treed field borders net export more than 82,000 individual hoverflies per kilometer per week more
Mm.
than grassy field borders net export. So basically, it was this really surprising result that all these hoverflies are coming from treed field borders into crops and not going back into treed field borders. And the same is not happening in grassy field borders.
Yeah, so what's the why of that? Do we know?
What we think is going on is that the treed field borders are really important for the larva. So we think what's happening is there's a few females, gravid females, entering the treed field borders. They lay a bunch of eggs, and then it's the emerging offspring that exit. And that's how you get so few going into the borders, but then so many coming out of the borders.
Interesting. So knowing that, a lot of times when we have these conversations, how do we naturally increase the populations of these beneficials? Is the key there the treed borders then?
Yes, and we found, so we measured as well within the tree field borders, different components of the vegetation. So tree density, shrub density, amount of stumps, downed woody debris. And what we found is that none of these components could explain movement. So what we found is that any tree border can act as this net exporter of hoverflies.
So the characteristics don't matter. Like it's not like having more dead wood or like just have treed borders.
Exactly. As long as you have a border that has trees in it, you're good to go.
And not
That
even
easy.
like evergreens versus like really? It's just any treed
Mhm.
border.
Yep.
Sorry, Carol, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's that easy. So whether it could be a matter of maintaining treed borders rather than cutting them down, or even it should be possible to plant them just fairly simply without worrying about planting more than one tree species. It'll develop into this treed border that net exports hoverflies. As far as we can tell, Rachel measured, I think, 12 different vegetation characteristics. She only mentioned some of them, but she also measured flower abundance and the shrub and herbaceous plant composition, and none of that seemed to relate to um, how many hoverflies were coming out. So it does seem to be a structural property. Maybe it's affecting the microclimate. Who knows?
Mm. Really kind of get in the weeds here. Just curious. What does the population density have to be of trees in order for it to be considered a treed border? Like how many? And I mean that in all seriousness, where people are like, "Well, I got a couple trees out there, I'm good," but maybe that's not good enough. What does the density need to be?
I think that's a
Uh,
great question. Sorry, what? Yeah, I'll just go and then you go, Rachel. We didn't actually study that, but maybe Rachel can describe what the borders were like that she did have traps next to.
Hmm.
yeah, we had a range of treed field borders, so we tried to select some that were uh, gappier, so not as many trees, um, sparser amount of shrubs, and we had some that were uh, thick enough that you couldn't walk through them to the other side. I don't have the exact number in my head, but there was quite a variety.
That's very interesting. Okay, Carol, what other beneficial insects could benefit from these treed field borders?
Well, that's a good question. And we are interested, is this just a phenomenon that you see with hoverflies, or do other beneficial insects really benefit from treed borders as opposed to herbaceous borders? And another PhD student of mine, Pilar Jimenez Ronquencio, is studying several other groups of beneficial insects, so including carabids, which are ground beetles, spiders, ground-dwelling spiders, and vespid wasps. So those are your paper wasps, hornets, yellow jackets, and we don't tend to think we want to conserve those insects, but they are voracious predators of many of the many crop pests as well as other insects. So we've been studying all of those. We haven't found quite as dramatic effects on any of them. However, for carabids, there do seem to be more carabids hanging out in both kinds of field borders actually early in the season, and then late in the season there's way more carabid activity in crops. So both kinds of semi-natural vegetation in your field borders do seem to promote ground beetle over winter survival. The data is not quite complete on that. Pilar is identifying tens of thousands of beetles, so she's still not quite finished. So we'll have more of a story on that later. Spiders are way more abundant and active in any kind of border than in crops. So the borders maintain spider diversity in agricultural landscapes, but the spiders don't seem to be actually moving into the crop that much. And then wasps, there's way more to and fro movement between wasps and crops in between treed field borders and crops than between herbaceous field borders and crops. That one's not quite as dramatic a difference as for Rachel's hoverflies, but again, it seems that treed field borders really benefit wasp movement into crops as well.
Hmm. Do these findings carry across multiple geographies? Like, so if we were looking in the Edmonton area versus looking in around Winnipeg or versus, we're in Alabama. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it definitely needs more research. But there is one study from Dr. Alejandro Costamagna's lab in Manitoba. And that he and a student in 2019 published a paper that found a similar finding in soybeans. So there was way more hoverflies moving out of woodlands into soybean than out of some other crops into soybeans. So it wasn't exactly the same design of study. Again, they were using these bidirectional flight intercept traps, but they didn't compare herbaceous treed borders and field borders. But it is still support for this idea that even across the prairies in Manitoba, we still see that trees are supplying hoverflies to crops.
Yeah, I could see us having to work out some like net benefit calculations because we've taken down a lot of tree lines.
Yeah.
Fields for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
And
well, Rachel's actually just been to do an internship in New Zealand where she's been working on a kind of model that should allow exactly this. Would you like to talk
go
about
for it? Yeah.
Yes, I've been working on a model. It's called an individual-based model. And pretty much what it is you, on your computer, you set up a fake canola field and you outline it with borders. And then you can have individual flies move around according to a set of rules that you create for them. So we're using the rates of movement and flower visitation that we found in our study to inform the model. And then we can vary the amount of treed border and herbaceous border around the field and track the number of pollen grains that the flies are depositing around the field to see how crop pollination changes when you change the field borders. So this is the kind of study that you can't do in the field. You can't put a GPS tracker on every single fly just as of yet, but we can effectively do that in the computer. So it's a very exciting model to be working on, and hopefully we'll have more results on that soon.
Give each hoverfly like an ankle bracelet.
Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so from the audience's perspective, what else can producers do here with their field borders to enhance this environment for the beneficial insects?
The biggest thing would be just to maintain a variety of border types. So although we found any treed border benefits hoverflies, that likely doesn't hold across all insects. And because any treed field border helps hoverflies, if you plant any type of treed field border, you're going to be helping hoverflies. So you might as well plant a variety of them. So a variety of densities, a variety of different types of trees, types of shrubs, shrub density, downed woody debris around your fields.
And to add on to that, another reason why Rachel's saying that not only treed borders are useful is that in her studies of flower visitation in field borders, she's found that the flowers in herbaceous field borders are major resources for nectar and pollen for not only hoverflies, but also bees and also some other natural enemies in times when canola is not blooming. So herbaceous field borders provide other benefits. Even though they don't have this dramatic supplying hoverflies to the field function, they do support hoverflies when the crop's not blooming because there tend to be more flowers and different types of flowers in herbaceous borders than in treed borders.
Very cool stuff. This has been awesome. This has been so much fun. Learned a lot here, and kind of makes you think about what needs to be on the edge of the field. A lot of times we focus what's in the field and dealing with those opportunities and challenges, but the perimeter of the field also has an impact on what's happening inside that canopy. So this has been a fantastic discussion. I want to thank both of you for being guests here today on the Pests Predator podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Pests and Predator podcast. It's brought to you by Field Heroes, powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Visit fieldheroes.ca to learn how beneficial insects can benefit your farm.